Hi, everyone. I'm Edan of LightCycleAstrology.com. Welcome to the channel, friends. Today, we are taking a look at the upcoming Venus retrograde that is happening in the sign of Leo between July the 24th and September the 5th. So normally we take a look at the transits for the week, but because in my past experience, I have noticed that that week prior to Venus retrograde, there's kind of a tension in the air. So I thought, let's just take a look at this upcoming Venus retrograde this week. Next week, Venus begins to retrograde, and I think we'll do some horoscopes for all 12 rising signs that will give us a sense about where Venus retrograde is most likely to come up in our lives based on the house topics of our rising sign. But this week, I thought, let's just get out ahead of this. Let's prepare a little bit. What is Venus retrograde all about? In particular, in the sign of Leo this time around. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave me some comments in the comments section, especially as Venus is going retrograde. If you tell me what your rising sign is and you're comfortable sharing things that are going on, that is really fun and helpful for all of us to see what kind of experiences come out of the Venus retrograde. You can always go to my website, lightcycleastrology.com, if you want to get a reading from me. Right now, the wait time is about 2 weeks out. So I'm seeing about one client per week when I have time, and I like to prepare a good week in advance. So you can find out more about readings from me at lightcycleastrology.com. One reason why I think that the week leading up to a Venus retrograde is sort of tense is, one, because a planet is moving in a way that is abnormal. Venus is slowing down to a complete halt this entire week. By the time we get to July the 22nd, we have 48 hours where Venus is essentially completely still in the sky, not moving forward, not moving backward. And that is just kind of out of the unusual. So there is an omen that things are just unusual for a time. But the other big reason that I think that there's kind of a tension with the week leading up to a Venus retrograde is because most of us sort of get that Venus retrograde anxiety that is about, obviously Venus being the planet related to love and relationships. A lot of us can begin to feel anxious, like our relationship won't survive the Venus retrograde, or by the end of it, everything will be crumbled and we'll be heading towards divorce court or something like that. One thing that is helpful to alleviate that anxiety is that if you have a sound, healthy relationship, and at least have just the normal kinds of issues and the ups and downs like any relationship will have, Venus retrograde will not be, you heading towards divorce court or an imminent breakup just because it's going retrograde in the sky. It'll likely be more about, how do you love that person? How does that person love you? Is there a way that you can reconnect or recapitulate your relationship to things like joy, creativity, fun, sometimes children, and your relationship to people around you? That can be a time period where you reconnect in a particular way. Maybe there are people from the past that are coming back and visiting you at this time, but it won't necessarily mean that all is doomed for your marriage or something like that. Now, on the other hand, though, if you already have a sense in your heart that you're in a relationship or a situation that it cannot last, it's not right, something is heading towards a separation or a breakup, you'll already know it. You'll already be aware of it. It'll be that kind of situation where you're sort of thinking, how much longer can this last? In that case, yes, a Venus retrograde can be a time where the final nail in the coffin is hammered down, and so to speak, and you're heading towards a separation within that relationship, or things begin to break down to a point where it no longer, survives. But for most of us, that is not going to be the case. For most of us, this is going to be about Venus in Leo kinds of things. Okay, well, let's go ahead, guys, and we'll pull up the real-time clock and we'll take a look at the period of Venus retrograde in the sky here. So let me just roll this up to the top of the chart here, and we'll go back to July the 22nd. So this is basically over the next week here. we see that there's a new moon coming through in Cancer, and then we have Venus really slowing down and grinding to a halt almost the whole week. By the time we get to July the 22nd, here comes the little S indicator in the real-time clock that shows you, okay, Venus is now stationary. She's going to be stationary for 2 whole days. That's a really interesting, like, liminal time where time may feel a little bit odd or strange. But by the 24th, we see that the little RX is indicated that Venus now is turning retrograde. But one thing that's really interesting about this is that during that period that Venus is stationary, those 2 days between July the 22nd and the 24th, the sun enters Leo and becomes co-present with Venus. So one thing that I was thinking right off the bat about this Venus retrograde period is that I don't think that this Venus retrograde period is going to be the worst case or roughest misfortunate kind of retrograde, because we see the sun in his own temple. And the sun is the host of Venus. He is providing resources to Venus. So whatever kinds of tensions or issues or problems or misfortunes come up during Venus's retrograde period over the next 5 weeks, Venus is retrograde for 7 weeks, but the sun is only spending about 4 of those weeks in Leo. But at least initially for the first half of the retrograde, the sun is providing positive resources. He's in good dignity. He's in good spirits. He is perfectly capable of taking care of Venus. Maybe there are issues we have to work on, but there is support there. The support might be coming from a solar situation or a solar figure, somebody that has that authority to them in our lives, like a father or a boss or the government or something like that, something that has that solar kind of quality to it. And that is most likely going to be providing a little bit of help to Venus as she works through whatever issues are coming up. So I think that that is really interesting. Now, if we roll the clock forward to August the 13th here, we get the conjunction between Venus and the sun. Let me just go ahead and grab my title here. So this is the Venus cazimi on Sunday, August the 13th. This is the midway point between Venus's station retrograde and station direct. So this is the halfway point here. And now Venus is metaphorically reborn as a morning star. And then if we roll the clock forward to August the 5th, we get to Venus's station to turn direct. Now, the sun is now in Virgo, so there's about a week or so where the sun and Venus are not in the same sign, and that week could be the hardest week of the retrograde, I'm thinking right now. But by the time we get to September the 5th here, there is Venus stationing to turn direct in Leo at 12 degrees and 14 minutes. Now, one thing I did want to show you guys is I wanted to pull up my astronomy program and give you guys a demonstration of Venus retrograde in the astronomy program. Because if you've never seen this in an astronomy program, it can really help to demystify why it looks like from time to time that planets move in this retrograde motion. Why does that even happen? So I have the clock set to July the 3rd here, just a little bit before this week. And you'll see here is Venus in the middle of the screen, and here's Mars here. And you'll notice that there is this darker gray line, and then it swoops around, and then there is this lighter gray line. So this is Venus's orbital line in the program. And actually, let's just go back a little bit further to about, let's go back to, right around here. Okay, so this is May 14th now. I also have these green ecliptical lines set in the program here. And you'll see here is 100 degrees in the ecliptic. And then down here is 120 on the left side of the screen. Hopefully this picks up and you can see this in the video. But actually, let me zoom in. We have 100 degrees and 110. If I zoom in a little bit further, let's try to get to 5 degrees in the ecliptic here, 100 degrees and 105 degrees in the ecliptic. So back on May the 14th, Venus was between 95 and 100 in the ecliptic. To convert this into zodiacal degrees, let's go back a few more days here so you can see Here is 90 in the ecliptic. So this is equal to the beginning of Cancer. And so this Venus has just entered Cancer on May the 7th. And if we go forward now by days, watch Venus go around her orbit. This lighter portion of the orbit is the part of Venus's orbit that is on the far side of the sun, or furthest away from us. As Venus comes around the corner, as she comes, she begins to hit this corner and moves on to this slightly darker gray line here. And this is the part of her orbit that is between us and the sun. So Venus retrogrades happen when Venus passes between Earth and the sun closest to us. And as we go forward now, you'll notice that Venus does not advance towards these ecliptical degrees as fast. She begins to slow down. And by the time we get to first week of July, she's really slowing down. She's still passing. Look, she passes 145 in the ecliptic on July the 8th here. She's still going forward in the ecliptic, but right here you can start to see it. Look at these background stars. We're at 146 in the ecliptic, and watch Venus. She sort of begins to slow down, and she's not really heading towards 150. She's kind of turning around between 145 and 150 in the ecliptic. You see that? And now this, all that's really happening is we're seeing Venus kind of move to a position where she is between us and the sun. And we're also going around the sun in our orbit. And by the time we get to August, she is now heading back towards 140, right at the time that there's this conjunction with the sun. So this is the cazimi moment on August the 13th we talked about. And then Venus will go back in retrograde. And then essentially, before she hits the other side of the corner in her orbit, she appears to begin to go forward again, moving past 140 in the ecliptic again. So let me just go back to May here, and we'll do this faster, and I'll zoom out so you can see it. It's a little bit easier to see it that way, but I wasn't sure if this was going to be picked up on the camera or not. So if you're watching this video on a phone, if you get the chance, you can see this on a bigger, like a TV, and this will be easier to see. But okay, so we're at May 30th here. Let me just zoom out now and do this one more time, a little bit quicker. Okay, so here we go. Rolling forward by days, a little bit quicker here. Venus passes 120 is now in the sign of Leo. Watch this. Here's the slowdown right here. You can see it. There goes Mercury. There's the conjunction. Now we're in the second half of retrograde. We're coming close to the corner here, and it's just that optical illusion. Forward again. You see that? And if I actually just press play, it'll be fast, but watch. This is moving at really fast speed over months here. Venus conjunction with the sun. Venus on the far side of her orbit. She comes around the corner. Retrograde. Direct. Direct. This is just really cool. I used to watch this when I first had this program. I used to just watch this over and over again. Coming around the corner. Retrograde. Direct. So that's at high speed. But anyway, hopefully that gives you a sense about why do planets, from time to time, why do they go retrograde in the sky? That's why. So what could Venus retrograde in Leo be all about? Let's take a look at some themes that I've plucked out of the symbolism of both the sun, Venus being retrograde in the temple of the sun, and the nature of Venus itself. So, of course, Venus is relating to pleasure and how we find pleasure, how we relate with pleasurable things, what we find pleasurable, and that encompasses relationship and love and things we're attracted to. But happening in the sign of Leo. So, first of all, Leo, ruled by the sun, is really connected to things that have some kind of eternality to them. They have a transcendent quality that may be related to long term or lifetime kinds of goals, aspirations, or purposes. And that's because in the metaphysical construction of the way ancient astrologers were using the symbolism of the sun, the moon represented fortune and things that would change form in material ways, whereas the sun was sort of a planet that represented something that was constant or eternal. And so there's this connection that the sun has to God. And in my mind, light is probably, I've always thought of light as being the easiest way to imagine some kind of God. Just because of the way that light behaves, its properties, its speed, the fact that it's providing actual life to the planet and things like that. For me, my image of God really connects to just light itself. So that's how I relate to Leo and the sun in astrology. But when you think of light as providing some kind of central role, central meaning, central purpose or drive, central lifelong aspiration, this could be a time where we reevaluate our relationship to pleasure, but in a central way. So, for instance, is it a goal that the image that we have of ourselves or the way we want to appear to other people, that is really, really important for Venus in Leo. So if we've had this lifelong image of ourselves and what we could look like, how we could appear to other people, or how we see ourselves, that could be something that is a really big topic right now. So this could be a moment where we take moves or we take breaks from things that are stopping that. And this could be a period where we reevaluate and come back to some central meaning, some central purpose, some central drive about how we look, what we like, who we're with, what we love. Those types of things are all sort of taking a pause, and we're going to re-look at them or evaluate them in such a way that we could try to align ourselves into more of a central kind of path that leads towards our ideal image. And the ideal image could be towards anything that we are attracted to. So are we with the right person as like a partner because our image of what we want in life in terms of marriage or partnership or love, does this person that we're with, do they represent that for us? That's where you could see kind of a breakdown in relationships if Venus goes retrograde in Leo, and that ideal image that we have about, yes, this is my ideal image of what a marriage in my life is supposed to be about, right? We're going to reevaluate that. That's where it could become an issue if that doesn't align, if that relationship isn't in alignment with that overall life ideal. But another way could be our image of ourselves, right? Where we are thinking, I have always thought that I should appear to other people like this or be this kind of person to other people. And that could range from just like a physical kind of appearance, where we want to take steps to get in shape or something like that, which leads us to the reevaluation of pleasure. Because like for me personally, I struggle with trying to stay away from foods that are not image enhancing, let's say, right? So and I think we all do that to some degree. So just in the simple way, we could reevaluate the kinds of diet or food that we have in order to get back to that image or ideal that we have about ourselves in terms of aesthetic beauty or attractiveness or something like that. So any way that we're attracted, any way that we find pleasure in something, there is a reevaluation, or we're pausing things that we do maybe to change into doing something else that is different, that somehow realigns us with how we imagine very central things for our overarching life. That's theme number one. Theme number two is recapitulation in relationships. So I chose recapitulation very specifically because this word is defined something as like restating the main point. And again, we're talking about Leo, which is about the eternal meaning or the oneness of purpose or direction, the sort of lifelong goal or aspirations. And the sun can also represent just periods, even short periods, that we have this image that is kind of a central thing that we're focused on. So whether it's a short period or a long period, the sun represents those things that somehow drive us along some kind of central organizing purpose or plan or mission. So recapitulation, restating the main point. What is the main point of our relationship? Do we want to travel? Was that the reason that we were attracted to each other in the first place? Is that a really important thing to the relationship, that we make sure that we're traveling? Or what is it that it really has that central role in a relationship? Is it to buy land or have a house, have a family? Is it to not have a family and really focus on just being with each other? Whatever the situation is, there could be a recapitulation in the relationship itself. And of course, if there is some kind of gap or disconnection, this could be a time where it's just really important that we reconnect with our partner or with our children or with our family. That's a big part of the theme. Also, I think as well for Venus going retrograde in Leo, getting back to the central way that we relate. How do people relate to us? Is it working? Do we need to change something? Are we unhappy with that? Really big themes, kind of. Theme number 3 is going to be, this is more the shadow side. This is kind of the fun one to talk about just because I'm a Scorpio rising. And so I like to get into the dark stuff sometimes, but Venus in the blind spot. So the sun, the center stage, right? He is the central planet. He shines out this effulgence, but that effulgence can be blinding. There can be a way in which when we talk about the archetype of the sun, we are only seeing our own light shining out. So, and Venus is a planet that can often, in its shadow quality, relate to vanity or pride. So we can definitely see themes where we are blindly prideful, or we are blindly vain about certain things. Maybe we're putting too much ownership or emphasis on our appearance, and it's driving people crazy around us, or whatever the situation is. Imagine that quest for what we find pleasurable, the quest for what we find beautiful, the quest for what we want or are attracted to or are desiring, that in its shadow quality here, that retrograde can symbolize a time where there's misfortune coming in because we are blinded by some kind of Venusian thing. So that is sort of the shadow or downside, and a theme that really has to be talked about. I always get the sense with Venus and the Sun archetypal things together that it's kind of like a almost like a Brad Pitt or like a Angelina Jolie, that that incredibly attractive, almost otherworldly attractive, godlike beauty that comes in. And for me, I think for a lot of people, Angelina Jolie sort of had that goddess-like beauty quality, and Brad Pitt did too, where they were somehow like kind of above everybody else. And that was kind of a normal thing, I think, to think about those two people. So, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say. But I think in general, there was kind of like a worldwide consensus that, these two people were sort of in their own league, so to speak. And they had this kind of solar Venus kind of quality where it's like, wow, these guys are almost like royalty attractiveness, There's that kind of quality too. So we could definitely see the fall from grace of celebrities, especially celebrities that are beautiful or represent anything Venusian. So I think that is also a theme that could be coming up. But this is definitely a time to try to be a little bit cautious of going overboard with desire, trying to get what we want at all costs, because a planet in retrograde symbolizes some kind of weakness or misfortune related to those archetypal qualities of the planet. So we could suffer misfortune if we're too prideful or too vain or too spending too much money on things that we want or something like that. That could be where the trouble comes in. Okay, well, that's what I have for today. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you guys got something good out of this. Next week, we will be going into horoscopes for all 12 rising signs. We're going to see, in particular, where is this Venus retrograde happening in your chart based on your rising sign. So that'll be next Monday. We'll take a look at horoscopes. Hope you have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.